somewhere in the Soviet Union, 1940s. 5 men are placed inside a sealed chamber. The doors are welded shut. They are given food, water, books. They are told they will be released in 30 days. What happens next was never meant to leave that room. This story has been shared millions of times online. It has been called one of the most disturbing documents ever leaked from the Soviet archives. But here is the question nobody asks. Did it actually happen? Today, Forgotten Files does something most channels won't. We are going to kill the legend, and then show you the truth that is somehow worse. Because the real Soviet sleep experiments, they actually happened. And the people who ran them never faced a single consequence. It is 1945. World War II has just ended. The Soviet Union has lost over 27 million people. Stalin is paranoid. The Cold War is beginning. And inside Soviet laboratories, a new kind of warfare is being developed. One fought not with bombs, but with the human mind. What most people don't know is that the Soviet Union ran some of the most extreme human psychology experiments in recorded history. Officially, they called it the science of human performance optimization. Unofficially, they were trying to build soldiers, interrogators, and sleeper agents who could survive things no normal human being could endure. Here is something you need to understand before we go further. Sleep is not a luxury. It is a biological requirement as essential as oxygen. After 72 hours without sleep, the human brain begins to hallucinate. After 96 hours, it starts to lose the ability to distinguish reality from imagination. After 11 days, the world record, the subject suffered permanent psychological damage. The Soviets knew all of this, and they wanted to know how far past that edge they could push a human being. In 2010, a story appeared online. It described a 1940s Soviet experiment in which 5 political prisoners were exposed to an experimental stimulant gas inside a sealed chamber. They were monitored for 30 days. By day 5, they stopped sleeping. By day 9, they were screaming. By day 15, some had removed their own organs and were still alive. When the chamber was opened, what the researchers found made the soldiers refuse to continue. This story spread to every corner of the internet. Millions believed it was real, and this is where it gets interesting. It was fiction. The fictional story was inspired by something real, and when you read the actual history of Soviet sleep research, you begin to understand why the fiction felt so believable, because the truth was almost as extreme. The Serbsky Center for Social and Forensic Psychiatry in Moscow was founded in 1921. On paper, it was a mental health institution. In reality, under Stalin and later under Brezhnev, it became one of the most feared buildings in the Soviet Union. This was where dissidents, people who simply disagreed with the government, were sent to be diagnosed as mentally ill. Not because they were, but because it was more effective than prison. If you were mentally ill, you had no rights. You could be experimented on, you could be held indefinitely. And nobody on the outside could argue, because the state had doctors who said you were insane. They called it punitive psychiatry. The diagnosis most commonly used was sluggish schizophrenia, a condition invented by Soviet psychiatrist Andrei Snezhevsky. It did not exist in any Western medical literature. It could not be tested for. Its symptoms included, and I want you to pay attention to this, a belief that the Soviet system was unjust. That was the symptom. Believing the government was wrong. Thousands of Soviet citizens were forcibly committed, medicated with powerful antipsychotics, and subjected to experimental treatments, including extreme sleep deprivation protocols. for the crime of thinking differently. Pyotr Grigorenko was a decorated Soviet general, a war hero. He fought the Nazis. He served the state faithfully for decades. Then, in 1961, he gave a speech criticizing corruption in the Communist Party. Within months, he was arrested and sent to the Serbsky Center. He was diagnosed with paranoid development of the personality. He was not mentally ill. Every Western psychiatrist who examined him later confirmed this. But inside that facility, he was subjected to chemical treatments and sleep disruption experiments that left him permanently changed. He was held for years. His family was watched. His career was destroyed. And when he was finally released, he was warned, "Say anything, and we will send you back." Grigorenko was not alone. Historians estimate that between the 1960s and the 1980s, at least 2,000 Soviet citizens were institutionalized for political dissent using psychiatric diagnosis. The real number is likely far higher. Many files were destroyed. Many victims died inside institutions and were buried under false causes. The sleep experiments that were documented included forced wakefulness of up to 10 days, combined with chemical agents, sensory deprivation, and psychological interrogation. Subjects were monitored. Data was collected. And none of it was ever published, because to publish it would be to admit what they had done. In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed. For a brief, extraordinary window of a few years, some archives were opened. Western researchers and journalists rushed in. What they found confirmed what dissidents had been saying for decades. The experiments were real. The diagnoses were fabricated. The Serbsky Center had been a tool of state terror, dressed in the language of medicine. And then, the window closed again. Here is the part that should make you the most uncomfortable. After 1991, after the evidence came out, after Western psychiatrists formally condemned the Soviet practice of punitive psychiatry, almost no one was prosecuted. The Serbsky Center continued to operate. Several of the psychiatrists who had worked under the Soviet system continued to hold positions of authority in Russian medicine. The official position of the Russian government to this day is that individual excesses occurred, but that systematic abuse cannot be proven. The files that would prove it, many are still classified. The fictional Soviet sleep experiment has been read over 50 million times online. It has spawned films, podcasts, merchandise, and memes. Meanwhile, the documented history of punitive psychiatry and actual sleep deprivation experiments on Soviet political prisoners has barely 1% of that cultural footprint. Ask yourself why. The fiction is more dramatic. It has monsters and gore and a clean horror story ending. The truth is slower, more bureaucratic, and more disturbing, because it did not require monsters. It required doctors, educated men and women with degrees and uniforms, who convinced themselves they were doing science. Before you think this is only history, consider this. The use of psychiatric diagnosis as a political weapon has been documented in Russia as recently as 2023, where opposition figures have been referred for psychiatric evaluation after arrests. China's Nkang system, a network of forensic psychiatric hospitals, has been used to detain Falun Gong practitioners and political dissidents since the 1990s. The United States used sleep deprivation as an interrogation technique at CIA black sites after September 11. It was documented, defended by government lawyers, and then quietly discontinued after international outcry. The tools change, the logic does not. When a government decides that an inconvenient person must be silenced, Medicine has, in every era, been willing to help. The Soviet sleep experiment, the fictional one, is frightening because it imagines a government that turns men into monsters through science. The real history is frightening for a simpler reason. It did not need to create monsters. It just needed ordinary people, given authority, given paperwork, and given permission to stop seeing other people as fully human. That is not a Soviet problem. That is a human problem. And the reason Forgotten Files exists is because forgetting these stories is the first step toward repeating them. Now, before we go, something we want to be honest with you about. Every visual you saw in this video was brought to life with the help of artificial intelligence. We use AI not to replace history, but to resurrect it, to give faces and places and atmosphere to stories that have no surviving footage. The past left us words and documents and names. We used AI to give those words a world to live in. We think that is what technology should be for. If this episode made you feel something, if it showed you something you did not know existed, then Forgotten Files has done its job. We are building a library of exactly these stories. The ones that were buried. The ones that were classified. The ones that someone somewhere decided you were better off not knowing. Every week, we open another file. Subscribe so you don't miss it. And if this episode changed the way you see something, share it with one person who needs to see it too. History only stays forgotten if we let it.